Well, it started out, it was a shotgun wedding really, because we from nowhere had a problem with CQC over the registration of one of our new services. We just spent £2 million on it. It was state of the art. It was designed for the most complex individuals. And so we thought, well, what are we going to do? So we looked at all the lawyers that we were using, and we decided to extend our range of lawyers. Somebody mentioned, one of my non-execs, that Neil Grant mentioned his name, and we spoke on the telephone. And I was very, very impressed with what Neil had to say. I said, why should I hire you, Neil? And he said, well, because we'll take them on and we'll say it the way that it is.
CQC had given an indication that they weren't going to register it. So I became involved, we developed the strategy, and what we decided to do was to go back and say to CQC, don't issue a notice of proposal to refuse. We've got a case to show you, an abundance of evidence, hold off. And it was because I was contacted by Paul at an early stage that that was possible.
Neil's background was very important for two reasons. Firstly, because of his background having worked with Care Quality Commission. Inside the Care Quality Commission, he was a gamekeeper turned poacher. So he knew all the nuances and he understood all of those things. And I think, like a lot of people who've come out of the Care Quality Commission, he had a certain attitude and saw the issues that actually exist within there. So we were able to address those.
It wasn't a straightforward process because CQC was relying upon its guidance called registering the right support, which at that stage had fairly recently been issued and hadn't really been consulted on at all. But really getting a strategy in place and putting in detailed representations on a repeat basis to CQC really made the difference, to the point where they had no option other than to register, because that was unequivocally the right thing to do. So it was a great outcome. We got the service registered, and I'm very pleased to say that it was inspected a couple of years ago and it got an outstanding rating from CQC. And this was the service that they did not want to register just a year or so earlier.
I liked his whole sort of strategy that he came up with, and that really resonated with me because it was very direct, it was very fair, it allowed us to sort of pull out the information and the data. Because I mean, one of the things about our services are that we operate paperless systems and so on, so we have all the data and we can use all of that in a very constructive way.
Cases always turn on the facts and the evidence. And Home from Home Care were able to provide me with all the information that I needed, all that documentation that went in to actually support the case.
We were the first people, I think, to really get hit by registering the right support. With Neil, we decided that we would extend our sort of action against the Care Quality Commission, and as a result of our actions, they were then forced to, or agreed to, reconsult, which is what they hadn't done. So they went from what I would term a sort of almost an unlawful situation to actually sort of acting in the right way, and they consulted. Unfortunately, the way they consulted didn't actually live up to the expectation of the consultation. But that we held them to account, and using Neil, we were able to make our point.
Well, I've been a regulatory lawyer for about 30 years. And success is always based on developing a strong partnership relationship with the client as far as possible. And that was very clear from the outset in working with Paul Savary and his team.
I found that Neil sort of was refreshingly, I don't want to use the word aggressive because he wasn't that, but he was very proactive and would take the fight to the enemy rather than allow the enemy to walk all over us. And I do rather approach these things that you're either my best friend or my worst enemy until we've actually resolved the situation. And having Neil as our ally was a phenomenal success.
The Care Quality Commission say that they're in the game of actually promoting innovation, creativity within care services. Sadly, my experience is they don't fulfil on that objective. And why do I say that? Because they've issued guidance to the sector, the LD sector, the autism sector, that is frustrating the development of innovative projects, innovative settings. So how do you deal with that? I mean, a number of things. One has to look at the guidance and you have to sort of work around it and present a case based on the facts and the evidence judged against the regulations to hold CQC to account, to say, in actual fact, you're a statutory body and you have to apply the law. You're not there to apply policy or shape the market in a way that you think is correct. You're there to apply the legislation. So it's important, I think, that services like home from home care are allowed to expand. And why do I say that? Because they're outstanding. And there's a real need for people that are in assessment and treatment units and have been there for many years in many cases, that they're given that opportunity to be discharged to community settings that are actually first class, where they'll be safe, where they'll make progress, where they can really develop a quality of life that they don't experience at the moment.
I think on a more conciliatory note towards the Care Quality Commission, they do actually have a problem which actually all providers should be aware of, and that is the fact that they're dealing in the history of the sector, all the things that have gone wrong, Winterbourne View, all of these points of reference, which makes them very risk averse. But that put us at a real sort of disadvantage, or them at a disadvantage with ourselves, because we're absolutely at the cutting edge of care and the way that we deliver care. We're totally unique. Everything we operate is paperless. We use data in ways that nobody else would sort of dream of using data. And this is the future of care, whether they like it or don't like it. It's disappointing that they won't actually come and really sort of engage with us, because we've invested millions in creating these services. The service that they refused to register, they then subsequently gave us outstanding for. Well, surely if something that you said is a model that doesn't work, you then give outstanding for. I mean, just logically, any learning organisation, any person-centred care organisation, which they should be, which is what they demand of us as providers, they should apply the same principles to themselves as they demand from us. And they should be learning, and they should be taking this on board, because this actually affects so many people going forward. And this is massive reutilisation of funds, better utilisation of funds that can make a huge difference to the whole sector. And yet they're blocking it essentially.